Hi everyone, it's me, New York vocalist Benita Charles. I'm here for another episode of Singing Tips. I'm back at the Brookfield Place in Manhattan. The Luminaires light show is still going on and it's so gorgeous. Unfortunately you can't see it with this iPad. For some reason the colors aren't showing up, but it's so gorgeous. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is the last singing tip for the Release Your Own Music section. So I said, you know what? Why not go out with the Luminaires light show again? So I hope everyone is having a great evening. If you don't know who I am Benita Charles. I live in New York and I'm a vocalist. And every week I give singing tips to beginner singers to help them become professional singers. And today we are celebrating tip number 30 of the singing tips. And this is the last singing tip in this series, which is Release Your Own Music. But before we get into the content, I just want to give you a little bit of background on singing tips. So every week I give, oh hello Oleg, how are you? Thanks for joining. This is Singing Tips and I am Benita Charles. I live in New York and I give singing tips to beginner singers every week to help them become professional. And each week the tips are in a certain section. And we are closing out on this section, which is Release Your Own Music. So all the tips, it's 10 tips in this section. So all the tips that we've talked about for the past few weeks has been about releasing your own music. So just to give you a little bit of background, Singing Tips is divided from the show part and the music part. And that was inspired by a movie that I saw in 2014 called Get On Up, the story of James Brown. And in that movie, James wanted to branch out and do some business decisions and do some things in terms of the business. And his manager, played by Dan Aykroyd, said, no, this is show business. You focus on the show and I'll take care of the business. And James Brown said, no, I'm going to do both. And that gave me an idea of why not show these singers the business side of things and the show part. So the show part is all in preparing your voice, live performance, and we're talking about releasing your own music. And the business part is the other side of it in terms of how you make money. So we are focusing on the show part right now, but we're going to eventually get to the business, and we're getting pretty close. We've had, this is the last tip in this section of releasing your own music. So we talked about your talent. Hello, Caterham18, thanks for joining Singing Tips. I'm Benita Charles, I'm in New York, and every week I give singing tips to beginner singers. And the way everything is divided is we have a show part and we have a business part. Now right now we're talking about the show part, but eventually we're going to talk about the business part, and that's the most important part in terms of how do you make money with your singing. So we are on the last tip of releasing your music, and that's the name of the tip today is called Releasing Your Music. No, I'm sorry, this is the section of releasing your music, but the tip is oh yes, that is the I'm sorry. The section is Release Your Music, and actually the last tip of this section is Release Your Music. So sorry about the confusion. There's 3 segments in terms of releasing your music. So just to give you a recap of this whole section, we talked about why you should release your own music, and that's to share your gift to the world, your message. We talked about writing a hit song. We talked about the components of a song, the melody, the lyrics, the arrangement. We talked about copywriting your song, protecting your work. We talked about collaborations, why it's good to work with a partner and create a great song. So now, and then last week, which the last tip, we talked about working with a producer. So now you're ready to release your music. You're ready to get it done. So this tip, release your music, is all about after you talk to your producer, after you know, what should you do? How do you get your song out there? You know, what do you do to get your song created? So I have 3 sections that you need to do. So we call, the first section is pre-production, the second section is production, and the last section is post-production. So pre-production is everything you do to prepare before you get into the studio. So for instance, you practice your song, you make sure you know that song inside and out, so when you record it, you're singing it from your heart. And then if you need to meet with the producer before you go in the studio, then that's all in pre-production. So production is when you get into that studio and you get ready to record. So now you're in production, you go in the vocal booth and you sing from your heart, because that mic picks up everything. It picks up like your imperfections, and it will pick up your emotions, and that's what the audience connects to. Is so you make sure that you are connecting to that song, so that when you sing it, you're emotional, and the audience can feel that when they hear your song on the radio or they buy the song. So and then I have, so let's say you recorded the song and you like what you hear, because sometimes it takes a few times before you like what you hear. Then I say the next section, the next studio time you book should be for mixing, and that's when the producer mixes the music, you know, with the vocals. They make sure that everything sounds good together. And another point that I have is make sure you listen to that song outside of the studio, because a lot of times it sounds so good in the studio and you're like, oh, it's really great, and then you take it home and it doesn't sound as good, or something's missing, it sounds hollow. So I say make sure that you this is starting the light show again. So make sure that you listen to that song outside of the studio. So that's production. So then we have the last section is post-production, and in post-production, that's when the producer will give a final mix down of the vocals and the music. Now I usually take my song to get mastered, and that's in post-production. But one of the things that the mastering producer said to me was to make sure that the final mix is good, because once you take it to the mastering to get it mastered, and we'll talk about what that means, they can't change. There's nothing they can do. They can kind of try to enhance it, but they can't change a bad mix. So make sure the mix is exactly what you want, and with the final mix down, and also listen to it outside of the studio. And with the mix down, they do equalizing, and they do the audio levels, and they compress the voice, they compress the music. They make sure everything is even, like with the music and the voice. The voice is not louder than the music. They make sure everything is even. That's your mix down. So then you're ready for your mastering. And now I recommend mastering because that gives it that radio crisp sound. Also with mastering, they make sure all the levels are even with each of the tracks. So when you play each song on your CD, the levels are the same. It's not like one song is louder than the other. And they also, like I said, they do highs and lows, and it gives that crisp radio sound, and that's what you want, is that crisp radio sound. So and also with mastering, that's what you're going to give give the duplicating company that master for them to make copies, and that's for your copies of your CD. So that's another reason why it's important to get it mastered, because that's what they're going to use to copy it. And a lot of times, if you don't get it mastered, every time you copy it, it denigrates the sound. So if it's not mastered, the copy is not going to sound as good as the original. But if you master it, it's going to sound the same. So that's another reason why you should master it. Oh, hi, I see I have 3 people on the line. Hello, how are you? So we're talking about you're ready to release your music. And so we're talking about the 3 components of recording: pre-production, production, and post-production. So I was talking about post-production. So that's after everything is recorded and mixed. You get it mastered so that you can get it copied. Now also in terms of getting your CD ready, oh, it looks like they're getting ready to start the light show again. So I'm at Brookfield Center in New York City, and they have this Luminaires light show. It's a beautiful show of lights. They had it ever since the holiday, and now they extended it through the end of the month, because it was going to close January 9th, but it looks like, so I'll turn it around so you guys can see it. Really pretty. It's all these different color lights. So this is called the Luminaires Light Show. It's a beautiful display of lights. So where are you guys? I see I have 3 people on here. Where are you guys from? 2 now, 1 now. Okay, so I'm losing people. But yeah, so this is in New York City. It's the Luminaires Light Show. Oops, sorry. Hello, I see I still have 1 person. How are you? So yeah, so we're talking about releasing your own music, and we were talking about post-production. So after you got it in the studio mixed in the way you want it, you master it. That's another thing, another step that you do before you copy it, because once you master it, it's exactly the way you want it. It gives it that crisp sound. Then you do your artwork. You do your artwork. I mean, you can, while you're doing that, you can be working on your artwork, before you record or whatever. But you do your artwork. You get the graphic designer to design the CD, the liner notes with all the credits and the song listings, the cover design, and you're ready to have it manufactured through disc makers or some other printing company. I think there's another place called Oasis. That's another printing company. But they also provide art graphic design, so you might want to take it there, or Fiverr.com is another website, FIVVR.com. You probably could get a good price of some graphic designers. And I mean, they do all kinds of services on Fiverr. They do graphic design, they do typing, they do I think they have virtual assistants, so anything you want. But it's so once you get that printed, your CD is done. And now this is part 1 of releasing your music, because this is from the show side. From the business side, there's another part to it in terms of marketing yourself, in terms of sale, making money. But right now, it's all in the show, so it's all in the presentation, and that's what the show is about: your presentation, your voice, your music, your live performance. Once we get into the music part, the business part, then it will be about how do you make money. So that's it. That closes out the original music section of Singing Tips. So we will have a recap show, and it will have all of the tips in this section. So yeah, that's it. Now I can be reached on Instagram. The Singing Tips blog is on Instagram. So you click on Instagram and it goes right to the bio, click on the bio, click on the link, and it takes you right to the Singing Tips blog. So all of the singing tips in this section, all of Singing Tips, you can go back and look at all the archives of what we talked about, each section. It's all there. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And this is the Luminaires Light Show in Brookfield, Cincy. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time on Singing Tips. Thank you.